The United States incarcerates more people and at the highest rate than anywhere else in the world. The impacts of this phenomenon, commonly referred to as mass incarceration, are felt not only by the incarcerated, but by their family members and communities. As we all know, 2020 will be known as historic for many reasons, but mainly for its deepened racial divide and the global pandemic known as COVID-19. These events have greatly affected justice-involved individuals and their families. As we prepare to learn, grow, and advocate for change, it is important that we take some time to reflect on just how much mass incarceration truly has a domino effect and is damaging for so many.
Started with 7, got up to 10, then next time you look around, it's 18. When it got up to 40, it got up to 50, and after that, you have 60 guys in one wing had corona. So we had our mask on, but we already had it. Once you realize you couldn't go anywhere because the door is locked, and you next to someone that has it, and you have it, you just accept it.
I couldn't breathe, like at all. I started kicking on the door. When they started kicking on the door, I couldn't breathe. They brought me up there, put me on a breathing thing, said, I think that was a minor asthma attack. They keep saying this is my asthma, but I know the difference. I haven't had asthma attack in years. This is very, very serious. So my biggest fear is that, what if I can't wake up in time and catch my breath? Or what if it just goes fatal? So I don't know what it's doing to my body. Because, like, either my head gets a pounding and my body be cold, or my, knees and feet, I feel like it's tingling or something, like poking at it, and like my body will start aching, like my ribs and stuff will start hurting, like, I don't know.
And they still doing the minimum. They're not cleaning showers, they're not disinfecting cells. It's just getting worse.
Mass incarceration and the failure to reduce prison and jail populations quickly led directly to an increase in COVID-19 cases. The inability to quarantine or practice social distancing, together with overcrowding, imperils the lives of many people incarcerated in jails and prisons. Incarcerated people are infected by the coronavirus at a rate more than 5 times higher than the nation's overall rate, according to research reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association. The death rate of inmates is also higher than the national rate. As of January 7th, 2021, more than 433,000 incarcerated people and staff have been infected with coronavirus, and at least 1,960 have died, according to the New York Times. Since jail and prisons are conducting limited testing on incarcerated people, it is likely to be an even higher number than what has been reported. How has all of this impacted inmates and their families? Let's take a look.
So pre-visit was, I would go to Christiansburg. I would go to the court in Christiansburg. Well, that jail in there, and they videoed him. I hated every part of it. Having to wrap my baby up and hold her up to the monitor. And when COVID happened, and there's a video calling app, at first it's cool, but it's still the technology is the bare minimum of the Wi-Fi. So it's you see him, but it's distorted. we can't hear each other. You hear the noise in the background, and then I'm already, there's no other way to put it. It's just difficult and hard, and you got to make the best of it. But, it's good to see his face, but the technology in there isn't the best. Or even sometimes he gets the pad and it's like, we have 2 seconds to talk because people have been running it down all day. And, it's just a lot of frustrating aspects to it.
Like in other states, they allow them to have visits behind the glass. That's the bare minimum. In Virginia, they're not allowing us to have no type of visits unless it's over video, which is hard. Which is hard because I really want to see my family. More importantly, I want to see my kids. But I know in other states they allow people to visit through the glass so that the virus don't be transferred.
When it comes to your loved one being put in a supermax away from you, you drive up, you drive back. That's what my husband and I would do. When he was in general population, we would drive up on a Friday and stay till a Sunday. Now, when you say, have I visited my son during COVID? No, I have not. Currently, he is at a lower level security prison, but because of COVID, they shut down visitation in March. They also shut down the visitation, the video teleconferencing visitation, that was shut down. Now they have it periodically, and they open it up for 20 minutes. And what I don't understand about that, if you're going to have the teleconferencing video visitation, why cut the time? Once they're in there, they're in there. So give the 45-minute call, and that's the only mode of visitation right now. And some may not understand that, but I'm okay with that because at that time they was not being tested. Now they're being tested. In fact, my son was one who was not going to get the vaccine, and he was able to educate himself more, and he made the decision to get the vaccine. And they are vaccinating. I can't say the pace, but it's on the VDOC website. But he's been vaccinated with his first shot, and he's due to get his second shot, and I'm happy that he's doing that.
It was close to 2 months before my wife realized I had corona. They turned the phones off, so no one could talk to their family. The minute they found out that we were going in quarantine, they turned those phones and the computers off, so you couldn't email them or call them. That's when I wrote 3 numbers down and gave it to different inmates. I said, if you ever see them escort me out, call this number and let them know why.
Although only making up about 20% of the adult population in Virginia, African Americans comprise over 60% of state prison inmates. According to an article from the Sentencing Project, the criminal justice system's high volume of contact with people of color is a major cause of African Americans' disproportionate rate of fatal police encounters, meaning that racially biased targeting from police officers in the overall criminal justice system puts Black lives at risk. It doesn't stop there. In addition to racial disparities, inadequate programming, solitary confinement, and mental health concerns are all significant issues within the system.
If you're in a Virginia prison, and I want to use the maximum security prison for example, Red Onion and Wallens Ridge, The programs up there is very limited. And the only program that I know of was the step down program. And the step down program was an endless circle. You can go through the step down program and still not come out of solitary. Some people get the books quicker. I've seen the books. If you, in my opinion, this is just in my opinion, if you had a 6th, 7th grade education, you could do those books. So if you have prisoners, people who have an education more than that, they would progress even faster through those books.
You know, his frustration is like no programs. They literally just sit there all day and there's no programs, no mental health. He's definitely going to need a lot of therapy after this on top of what he needed before, you know. But how do you recover from stuff like that? How do you recover? How do you really recover from stuff like that?
Unfortunately, approximately 1 in 4 jail inmates and 1 in 7 federal and state prison inmates met the threshold for serious psychological distress, and the majority of prison inmates in federal prisons reported not receiving any mental health care during their incarceration.
Kevin spent 4 consecutive years in solitary confinement in Virginia. That was very taxing on him. And during that time, I had to be more than I ever thought I could be as far as a listener, a good listener, because they only have 20 minutes on the phone, 3 phone calls a month. And so instead of me running my mouth, I have to let him run his mouth and get his thoughts out. Kevin was released from solitary confinement in 2017, but I promise, because when you have a loved one in prison, you become a praying mother. And I promise God, if you gave my son grace and got him out of solitary confinement, I would go back and fight for others.
The situation happened like a year ago now, but to my memory, it was like he tossed a juice and they tried to say like he tried to hit the officer. And so they put him in the hole for 16 weeks. And, you know, people are already frustrated. You know, they can't be home with their families. It's a frustrated environment.
Here in America, sometimes we give people the picture that the cell is bars where you could hold on to the bars and look through the bars and see bars. No. We are in Virginia where the cell is a steel door with a slot where trays come in. That's it. They in a steel door. So in that steel door, if you in solitary confinement and a guard comes through that door and say, stand for count, and the guard give you an infraction and say you didn't stand for count, that's an infraction. But you in a parking space. And on that day, maybe you didn't feel well enough to stand. You not having your cell tidy is an infraction. You have too many stamps. That's an infraction. I mean, some of the infractions are so petty, you have to say, we have to do better than what you can write up. And then you have to understand too, sometimes you have guards writing up individuals and they are recommending sentences sometime more than what the individual went to jail for. I know an individual that's in jail 7 years from the courtroom, but he has done a total of 40 years in prison based on prison charges.
It was fun, but it wasn't fun. When I left, I tried not to think about it as much because I knew that would just make me even more emotional than I already am. And there was nothing I could do about it. So it's like, you have to accept the fact that you have to leave.
I've always, since she was able to, you could tell when your child is no longer a baby where they're referencing things and putting mama. She calls my mom Juju. So putting things together. I think when he comes home, she may be a bit confused. So I started to show her pictures and we video chat. He calls every day when I have money on the phone or the system. But I try to be this is Dada, and Dada's calling. Dada be home soon. Dada loves you. And so I hope that she knows.
Although children have committed no crime, they pay a huge penalty because of others who have. There are many children who carry feelings of sadness and loneliness, while others are left with a void and frustration.
Both of my parents were incarcerated, but with my mom, I never felt her absence. And with my dad, it's that's all I felt. And I remember when I was young, I would always ask about him because he was around and I would go visit him. And I'm not going to go too much into my dad's business, but he had many issues and it just wasn't healthy for a child to be around. Then over time, I would see for myself that he had no intentions of keeping any of the promises that he made me. And then it got to the point where I could always tell when he got out, because when he was incarcerated, he would at least call, but when I would go long periods without speaking to him, those were the times where he was released. So you're out here doing you and not even thinking about the child that you have. And it's as if my existence wasn't enough for you to make better choices. He essentially abandoned me. And, I thank God for my aunt and uncle, and them being there to pick up the pieces. When I was younger, I didn't realize that when my aunt took over, whenever I would ask, my aunt would either change the conversation or she'd be like, well, I don't know where he is. I haven't heard from him. And looking back, I see why she put some distance between him and I. When I was in the moment, I used to think, maybe she just doesn't want me to be in contact with him. Maybe she's just being mean, or maybe she just doesn't want to share me. But the reality was, I didn't know the extent or the magnitude of the things that my father did, or his drug habits, or just overall his bad habits. And so my aunt and uncle were protecting me.
It's weird. I can confine an entire relationship to what, a 5-10 minute story. It's I had a lot of issues with when I was a teenager with dealing with the fact that he didn't choose to fight for me, didn't choose to want to be in my life. He just kind of let it go very passively. And then when I was about 16 years old, he messaged me on Facebook and said he wanted to have a relationship with me. And Of course, I was like 16, so excited. Went behind my mom's back and drove up with a friend to go meet him. But he always acted when we did talk, he acted like he cared so much about me. Like I remember one time he told me I was like the only reason he hadn't killed himself. Like he said like really inappropriate, like manipulative stuff to me throughout my life, and just like made it seem like I was so important, but he was capable of disappearing so quickly. Like I think his absence was more a part of my life than his presence. Like the fact he wasn't there affected me a lot more than when he was there, because I don't know, just to have someone claim they love you so much but never act like it is really confusing, I think. I guess from the kids' point of view, I would say trust. If there is a parent trying to protect you, trust them that it's the right thing. Don't get angry. And if you get angry, just try to understand. You'll know more when you grow up. And it'll make a lot more sense why they weren't allowed in your life as much.
It is clear that the impact of one person's incarceration can be felt by all members of the family.
I live, I eat, I sleep, and I breathe this fight. And I had to ask myself, is it really worth it? Because if my husband dies, is it really worth it? All the hours, the sleepless nights, the stress, the worry. It's like screaming in the middle of a crowd that is quiet and nobody can hear you. Nobody. And you're screaming as loud as you can, and there's so many people around you and nobody can hear you.
I have two sons. The left side of me, I say, belong to my son Kevin, the one that's incarcerated, and the right side belong to my free son Kyle. My left side is filled with arthritis. It aches all the time. And it has been that way ever since he's been incarcerated. And if it's the left side, it's the side of your heart. So my heart aches. But I stay strong, and I have faith that they are not going to bury my son alive.
Despite all that has happened and continues to happen, inmates and their families remain optimistic of change.
What are your thoughts about the future of how the system is? I'm a bit hopeful. There's days where I'm not, but I'm a bit. And when the Christmas season came around, I got a phone call and they were like, it was staticky. I couldn't really hear them. They're basically telling me like, your partner signed up for a program to give your children toys. And I just started crying. She started crying, but it was just a beautiful moment because we couldn't hear each other, but it was like the energy. I think she felt like why I was crying, and then it was just kind of like you started crying, and it was just that feeling of a little bit of hope, or that familiar feeling of like the pain, So I want to be optimistic for the future. I think, things are changing slowly but surely.
Do you have any messages for either people on the inside or families on the outside?
Yes, everything, speak up. Speak up for yourself, because at the end of the day, nobody else will. And people can't help you unless you choose to take a stand. I would just ask that anybody that's experienced some of the things that I've experienced to speak up for yourself and keep fighting.
As we talk about and have these conversations, we must include the women. There are so many women who are double suffering with the issue of mass incarceration and solitary confinement and being mistreated. And we must include the women. You see Black women out here all the time fighting for their children. You see it. Black men do it too. But they need to come in even more, because I get it all the time. I have a husband, and he supports me. But I tell him all the time, brother, you got to come to the table. You got to get in here and go through these trial transcripts and make these calls with me. What I would say to any family, come together, fight together, and stop calling these advocates and nonprofit organizations and putting your whole situation in their hands. Get in the grind. Get in the fight with these organizations. You have some great organizations here in Virginia that's fighting. Never give up. I would tell everyone, never give up. Take your health break, take your mental break, but never give up and keep the faith.
As the overuse of the prison system continues to be exploited, its growing impact extends to the children, families, and communities outside its bars. You see, families must also manage the financial, psychological, and economic effects. The 2010 Pew Charitable Trust Report puts this in perspective, citing that more than 1.1 million men and 120,000 women in the United States jails and prisons have children under the age of 17. And 2.7 million children nationwide have one or both parents behind bars. This has to stop. This cannot continue. Families are at risk. Children are at risk. Communities are at risk. Lives are at risk. For the journey taken and its cost, for hearts broken and lives lost, all are equal as we wait, stories told of love and hate. Call us different or oppressed. Behind the fence, we did our best.